Hello, everyone. We're having some technical difficulties, so I hope you can bear with me here. I have to double progress my slides. But today, we'll be talking about video game victims of cinematography, or more specifically, what exactly makes something a video game, and how certain outside influences can poison your game developer brain. Oh no. Okay, thank God. Now, I'd like to preface this talk by saying there's no scientific basis for anything I'm saying, and instead I'll be presenting my own personal opinions and anecdotal experiences as universal truths. So if you disagree with something I say, that's okay. It's just video games. Now, before we talk about video games, we should talk about games. Wikipedia defines a game. Oh my God, it's not. Okay. Wikipedia defines a game as an activity that's characterized by a challenge and a set of rules, typically done for enjoyment. Now, that's not very specific. Like, what defines a challenge? How many rules should there be? I don't know. What I think matters most. Oh, no. Okay, thank God. What I think matters most here is the word activity, which implies an active experience, active being the all-important word. Now let's consider a simple animal psychology setup. We're going to have this rat play a really fun game. Imagine we place the rat into a box. Inside the box, there is a light that points down at a button. When the rat walks up and presses the button, they get injected with cocaine. We know this is a game because there's an active challenge, pressing the button, and there is a rule: when the button is pressed, you get injected with cocaine. It may not be particularly challenging or complex, but this is a game. In fact, I would argue this is the purest form of a game. That being the simple activity of pressing a button and receiving a reward. Now, returning to video games. They're called video games because they are games played on a video display. We're getting to that. So consider our button to cocaine game we just made. It'd be a video game now if, when the button is pressed, an image of cocaine is displayed on a screen. But that's really boring. So instead, let's replace the cocaine with something like... Oh, come on. It is a horrible night to have a curse. A line of dialogue. Let's replace the cocaine with a line of dialogue. Now, we could expand this a little further by writing a whole story and then setting it up so that when you press the button, you receive the next line of the story until the story's over. Now, sadly, this is not a new idea. In fact, the concept of pressing a button to progress a game story is so fundamental to the medium that it'd be impossible to find who did it first. But there is an explicit genre for this loop known as a visual novel. Just as our rat cocaine box is the purest form of a game, I believe the visual novel to be the purest form of video game. Its feedback loop couldn't be any simpler, yet it still requires continuous active effort from the player to complete, which I again must emphasize the word active. Any minute now.
He's doing his best.
This is not a very good video game.
We're getting there. Now, for many years, video game narratives worked entirely on this premise of pressing a button to get the next line of dialogue. Final Fantasy and Fire Emblem games fed the story to you through dialogue boxes that must be actively progressed by the player. So did Pokemon, and I'm sure you can think of infinite examples yourself. It turns out that the visual novel genre intersects with nearly every single video game ever created, assuming it has even, even one line of dialogue for narrative purposes. Times are changing though, and now we can render realistic computer graphics in real time alongside spoken audio tracks and music. There's many new ways to convey narratives to players beyond just text boxes after text boxes. Being a visual novel is no longer enforced by hardware limitations. I'm going to argue now that the consequences of this have been disastrous for video games as an art form. The inspiration for this topic of discussion came to me a couple months ago when I was replaying one of my favorite games of all time, Zero Escape: Virtue's Last Reward. Zero Escape is a trilogy of visual novels about groups of 9 people who wake up in a facility with no memory of how they got there and are forced to participate in a death game revolving around various escape room puzzles. So they're visual novel puzzle games. I really can't recommend them enough. The first game, 999, was released for Nintendo DS in 2009. 999 looks how you would expect, filled with expressive 2D sprites for the narrative bits, while the escape room portions are simple 3D since it's on the DS. But most importantly, as a visual novel, every aspect of the game is driven by player engagement, whether that is pressing a button to get the next line of dialogue or solving the puzzles in the escape rooms. The second game, Virtue's Last Reward, was released for Nintendo 3DS in 2012 and might look a little surprising. The previously illustrated 2D sprites are now 3D models, but it's still a visual novel. Every line of dialogue must be actively pressed through by the player. The third game, Zero Time Dilemma, was also released for 3DS 4 years later. And while 999 and VLR are beloved, widely praised games, this game's unfortunately far less popular, for reasons I actually couldn't remember while I was replaying the second game. Which is really weird to me because I played through the third game like 5 years ago. I have basically no memory of it whatsoever. I played the first 2 games almost 10 years ago, and I remember pretty much everything about them. Now, Unlike 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, Zero Time Dilemma opens with a really fancy cutscene where all the characters are introduced one by one as the camera dramatically pans across them and they say their lines out loud with subtitles. Then the antagonist comes in and says, "Heads or tails, guys. If you guess wrong, most of you are going to die. Sorry." The player is prompted heads or tails. And if you guess wrong, then the game starts for real. Now, this is a pretty cool opening. The cinematic presentation is subversive and new, and really sets up a tense atmosphere for what should be a very suspenseful game. After the opening, you have a couple story branches you can start from, just like the other games, and when you choose one, it starts a new fancy cutscene where the characters are standing around and saying their lines out loud with subtitles while the camera pans around them dramatically. Something about all this feels kind of wrong by now, and after like 25 minutes passing without pressing a button, I realized that, oh my God. At least the cutscene can keep you occupied. I realized that this is not a visual novel at all, and I'm effectively watching a movie. Now, 25 minutes is an exaggeration, but this first story fragment is 15 minutes long, requiring 4 button presses from you to progress, which averages to 0.2 actions per minute. Now, that's pretty bad. Please just progress the slide. There we go. That's pretty bad. People are almost always exaggerating when they say a game plays itself, but this time we really did find the game that plays itself, and unfortunately it's the sequel to probably one of my top 3 games of all time. To reiterate, Zero Time Dilemma opens with a 10-minute cutscene, which chains into another 15-minute cutscene of your choice. Sadly, there is no choice, as the first escape room puzzle isn't reached until all 3 branches are progressed, meaning another 2 15-minute cutscenes, adding up to almost an hour of nearly zero interaction before the puzzle part of the game is reached. Perhaps the game could have been called Zero Interaction Dilemma. The intro of Virtue's Last Reward, however, has no cutscene, but instead gives the player the typical visual novel text box. The intro is 125 boxes of dialogue, which takes about 10 minutes to read if you're a slow reader. Then it drops you straight into the first escape room puzzle of the game, a bit more interactive and exciting than what its sequel did instead. It's important to meet things where they intend to be, though. We're viewing Zero Time Dilemma through the lens of its visual novel predecessors, but the director stated that Okay. The director stated that this entry was inspired by Telltale and their Walking Dead series of games, which are not visual novels. Now, I myself quite enjoyed those games when they first came out 14 years ago, so it's weird to me that I have such a viscerally negative reaction to Zero Time Dilemma, but 14 years is a long time, so maybe my taste has just changed. The Walking Dead opens with a similar in-engine cutscene. The first player interaction comes at 60 seconds when the player is given the option to respond to the police officer's comment about you. There's a limited time to react and make your choice as well, which, for someone actually interested in playing the game, requires them to maintain focus for when these prompts would appear, otherwise they'll miss out. 10 seconds later, another real-time dialogue option is offered. And then it transitions into a playable tutorial of the game's visual interactive systems. This is the first explicitly required input because you have to click on the rearview mirror in order to progress. Otherwise, you can just drive forever. So it seems that The Walking Dead was properly interactive, and Zero Time Dilemma is just uniquely terrible. I actually can't think of a worse example. Okay, please. Okay, there we go. I actually can't think of a worse example. Not a single one of the games people joke about comes close to being this uninteractive. Now, in case you forgot what we're even talking about, let's return to the rat cocaine box. If we redesigned this to match Zero Time Dilemma's game design, no longer would you be pressing the button to receive a cocaine injection. Rather, you'll receive an injection on an interval timer, and the button now does nothing. I think this beautifully illustrates why one system works and the other doesn't, but if it isn't clear to you, consider a rat who has injected a lot of cocaine. They need more of it, and if Zero Time Dilemma's interval timer doesn't provide enough, then it won't be an engaging experience and will become easily forgettable. This also recontextualizes what our game actually is. The challenge of this activity is not pressing the button. The real challenge is maximizing how much cocaine you can handle. The button to cocaine system scales for all users. Everyone can press the button as much as they need. One rat might read through the intro to Virtue's Last Reward in 5 minutes. Another might take 20 minutes. But the beauty of it is that every rat gets to go at their own pace, and always when they are paying attention and intentionally pressing the button to continue the story. Zero Time Dilemma, however, just streams itself into you at a single pace and requires pretty much no interaction to move the story forward outside of the brief puzzle segments. Like 75% of the game is spent staring at the screen doing literally nothing. So no wonder I didn't remember any of it. Now, obviously, reducing video games down to their interactions per minute is extremely reductive and is hardly a universal metric, as every game is its own game. But it's important we try not to take for granted these simple mechanics like the text box, which enforce a minimum level of active engagement. I guess you could say the text box is like a core ingredient that instantly makes something a game with its presence. And the reason cutscenes are bad is because they remove that. I think Zero Time Dilemma is the worst offender I've ever seen, perfectly demonstrating how horrible cutscenes can be for your game, to the point that I believe you should avoid them at all costs, which sounds extreme, but when making games, I think you should have a very good reason for removing what is keeping your player engaged. Instead of stressing about the implications of a real-time cutscene with proper voice acting and everything, model it as a series of text boxes to text boxes. It'll be much easier, much cheaper, and much more engaging than the alternative. It's basically a storyboard. If you want to look high production, then visual novels can be plenty cinematic themselves without actual animated cutscenes. Zero Time Dilemma is just an unfortunate experimental failure, but the genre has evolved since its release. The creator of Zero Escape followed it up with iSomnium Files, which melds the visual novel interface with those higher production 3D visuals. Paranormasight is another example, which makes heavy use of similar camera movements that Zero Time Dilemma does, but of course you get to click through the dialogue yourself at your own pace. Other games like Persona, and most games in general, only use cinematics for special parts of the game as a reward for hours and hours of your usual interactive gameplay, which feels like the only acceptable use of cinema in video games. A cutscene should come when the player is tired of interaction as both reward and reprieve. Anyways, I really just wanted to talk about how bad of a game Zero Time Dilemma is, and I need to make sure that no one ever makes another game like it. But if it is your vision, then you should check out the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games. I think they're pretty good. Now, lastly, I'd like to leave you all with a very important question. Is the auto button anti-art? I think so. Thank you, everybody. I also realized I forgot to introduce myself while I was going over the slides, so my name's Garrett. Hello. Anyways, that's all I have for you. I hope it was an exciting talk. Enlightening. Are we finished now? Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm not sure if we have time for questions because of the technical difficulties. You can do 2 questions? Okay, you can ask me about YouTube if you want. It's fine.
I have a question, but it's not YouTube.
Okay.
Have you heard of mixtape?
Mixtape? Yeah, so I thought I was going to put that in this talk, but I didn't want to buy it. I'm sure it is more interactive than Zero Time Dilemma, though. Tony.
How do you feel about Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots?
If the game opened with the 2-hour cutscene, I think it's really bad, but it doesn't, so it's okay. And it's Kojima, so it's like flirting versus harassment.
Have you considered maybe you just don't like moving images?
Well, I showed examples of moving images. I like pressing A to make the image move. I think that's the important distinction. Otherwise, I'm going to fall asleep.
I got a mic this time. Is Half-Life, which doesn't have traditional cutscenes, like you still have a lot of time where you're just watching them talk and not really do anything, is that also fine?
You get to move back and forth by pressing A and D a bunch, so I think that's okay.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were pointing something behind me. For games that have like QuickTime events during cutscenes, do you think that's like a suitable alternative to like that interaction, or do you prefer just like?
Well, that's what The Walking
events?
Dead does, and it was good.
Okay.
Okay, I believe we're all set. Thank you so much, everybody.